Titled it, Who is Your Master? And but an alternate title would have been Being Rich God's Way, or Being Truly Rich. And oftentimes our idea of being rich and being blessed is quite different than the way the world looks at it in comparison to the way God looks at it. So I have a few this versus that, to explain this gospel. This parable. And through that, I want to share the gospel with you, of course. Always share the gospel. Many people have fallen into all kinds of traps in this world, and I would say the trap of the trappings of this world. And many times, as a form of introduction, I just want to tell you that there's a lot of get-quick-rich schemes and out there. And you might receive a phone call and then you fall for it. And it's usually because we really have a wrong understanding of what true riches are all about. And Jesus is about to explain, he's finished talking about kingdom business. He's talking about the heart of the Father towards those who are lost, the lost ones before in chapter 15, the lost sheep, the lost coin. Last week we talked about the lost son. I'm not going to talk about the elder son just yet. I may go back another day. But I just felt led to continue. And today he's going to talk about true wealth. Riches that do not fade away. The riches of this world all will eventually be gone. But anyway, because we kind of look at things in the wrong way. We are easily sucked in, can I use that word, into schemes of the world, to things that perhaps sound too good to be true, and then they turn out to be good to be true, and we realize that we have gone and invested in the wrong thing. Now this message is not necessary for you, but it's also for me. So just realize that God's speaking to me as I go through this. I'm dealing with this. Some of us have fallen through these schemes and survived, and I know some people who have fallen for the schemes of the world and lost everything. And of course, eventually we all will lose everything. So the whole thing is a big scheme, okay? So just so you know. I actually know someone who lost all of their life savings. And that's hard when you're on retirement age. I heard of a story. You may have heard it. When was the Eiffel Tower built? For that, we maybe need Dale, the facts guy, but he's laying down on the couch.
Which tower?
The Eiffel Tower. You know, that big tower in Paris. I think it was during a world fair, and it was in the early century, 19-something, before 1920, let's say. I could be wrong, but it was back then, right? And after the World Fair, as many things are, the government actually apparently wasn't even planning to keep it. They were thinking they'd build it and then take it down. And as we did with this big ball, Science Center, we were thinking of that, and then we kept it. So the government kept it. But it was fallen into so much disrepair and disarray, and it looked like it might fall down. It's getting rusted up, and there was no money to fix it. So this article appeared in the newspaper that somebody, that they may be thinking about taking this thing down. Well, a shrewd character, a clever con man, let's just say, and I don't know his name, picked up on that, and then he thought, well, I'll just sell it to some scrap dealers. And so he made himself some false ID, and he went and found some scrap dealers that, there was like 7,000 tons there is 7,000 tons of steel. It was quite valuable. And he said, give me some tenders, bid on taking down the tower and keeping the scrap, right? So he picked 5 of them, he took them into a hotel room, he bought them dinner, treated them good. They all fell for it, but one guy really fell for it. And not only that, he even gave this guy a bribe to get the contract. Well, this guy took the bribe and took off, and then he kept looking in the paper to see what happened to the tower, right, or to this scandal. Nothing happened because the guy who gave him the bribe was so embarrassed to fall for such a thing that he never told anyone. This is just a story. And then basically he went back to Paris or to France a second time about so many years, maybe 20 years later, tried the same scheme again. He almost got away, but he got caught the second time. So I tell you that for no particular reason except that it's kind of like the schemes of the world. It's that thing inside of us that wants us to have wealth, earthly wealth, that draws us and blinds us of what's really going on. Jesus is talking to his disciples. You'll see in verse 1, Jesus is talking to his disciples, even though in verse 14 we'll see that the Pharisees are listening. The Pharisees and the scribes, it says, are sneering at him. So they're also listening, but primarily he's talking to his disciples. He's saying to them on this one, listen to me, you cannot be foolish when it comes to these matters. And so that's what he's going to do. And so he tells this story of the unrighteous steward, or the unrighteous manager, or the unrighteous caretaker. I'll explain more in a bit, but let's read it together. Verse 1, chapter 16. Almost? Verse 1, chapter 16. Luke. Oh, forgot to put it up?
Technical.
Technical difficulty? If you have your Bible, you can look it up.
Should I just read, or do you want me to wait?
Just read first, and then you can get it done, it will show up.
Okay, so let's read together. Starting at verse 1. Jesus told his disciples, so he's telling his disciples, there was a rich man whose manager was accused of wasting his possessions. So the characters here, I'm just going to explain as I go so that I can get to the message. But there was a rich man, and he hired a guy to manage his possessions. And this manager was wasting them. In other words, things didn't add up. So he called him and asked him, what is this I hear about you? Give an account of your management, because you cannot be manager any longer. The manager said to himself, what shall I do now? My master is taking away my job. I'm not strong enough to dig, and I am ashamed to beg. I know what I'll do, so that when I lose my job here, people will welcome me into their houses. So he comes up with a scheme. So he called in each one of his master's debtors. He asked the first, how much do you owe my master? Remember, he's still employed by the master, he's still the manager. And the guy says, 900 gallons of oil. He replied, the manager told him, take your bill, sit down quickly, make it 450 gallons of oil. Now you can imagine, a lot of debt, right? Then he asked the second, and how much do you owe? 1,000 bushels of wheat. That's a lot of wheat. If you don't know, that's a lot of wheat, he replied. And he told him, take your bill and make it 800. The master, verse 8, then, I wish you could see it up there, it would be so nice. The master commended the dishonest manager because he had acted shrewdly. I want you to take a close look at that, okay? He did not command, Jesus is not commanding his dishonesty. It's saying he commanded this guy that was dishonest because at least he acted shrewdly. He's got a point to make, so obviously he's not condoning the dishonesty, but he is commanding his shrewdness, right? And then he makes a statement. For the people of this world are more shrewd, are more clever, I'll tell you about that in a bit, in dealing with their own kind, the earthly wealth, earthly stuff, than are people of the light, than are Christians, people who belong to God in the kingdom. And he says this, I tell you, use your worldly wealth, the stuff that's found here, the worldly wealth, to gain friends for yourselves, so that when it is gone, you will be welcomed in the eternal dwellings. Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. And whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. So if you have not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches? Verse 12, and if you have not been trustworthy with someone else's property, because that's what we are, caretakers, who will give you property of your own? No one can serve two masters either. You will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money, mammon. It's not just money, but all the riches of the world. You can't serve it. The Pharisees who loved money heard all of this. See, so the Pharisees were listening. Jesus tells us that. And were sneering at Jesus. Sneering. How much sneering? It's like, they're probably thinking, he's talking about us again. Actually, his intention was to teach his disciples this time, but they still heard it, and they're still thinking, he's talking about us because they love money. It says, he said to them, and he confirmed it, yeah, you are the ones who justify yourself in the eyes of others, but God knows your hearts. What people value highly in this world is detestable in God's sight. Amen? God is amazing. You can put the slide back up. So I'm going to talk through the slide, and every once in a while maybe I'll refer to a scripture. You can put it up. So I've already pointed out that this parable has caused some grief to people who have tried to interpret it. Because in there seems like, if you're not careful, Jesus is praising the dishonest manager. But he's not praising his sin, he's praising his shrewdness. And he's saying, it'd be nice if you people who belong to me would be a little bit shrewd too with how you use your wealth. So that's the point. And this is why Jesus seems to be, in verse 8, if you put that up, it says this: the master commended the dishonest manager because he had acted shrewdly. So he's commending his shrewdness. So when you look carefully, we see clearly that Jesus is not praising the man's dishonesty, right? But his shrewdness, his cleverness in using this present opportunity. He had an opportunity just at that moment. He had a window of opportunity where he was still the manager, he still had time, and he did something about his situation. He didn't have to. Many would have panicked and done nothing about it, but at least he did something about it, right? Even though it's not right, but he did something in using that opportunity to provide for the unescapable, inevitable future needs that were going to happen when he lost his job. So he's saying, Jesus, could you find a different way to tell us this? Well, obviously, this is what Jesus said. This is why he said it. Because we know that Jesus calls the guy dishonest, right? And we know, it's safe to say, Jesus would not condone dishonesty. He would condemn sin, right? He would condemn it. So what is he saying? What is he actually saying? And so I wrote it very carefully down so that I don't make a mistake to tell you. He's saying, you Christians, most of us are, right here, can learn a valuable lesson from this pagan, dishonest manager. There's a lesson even from one of those who, in this regard, in many ways, is wiser than many of you. Sons of the light, he calls us. So we know he's talking about us. That would be us. That would be the Christians. So at least he saw this dishonest guy. He saw the emergency. He saw what was coming to him. He understood the ramifications of it, and he did something about it. You see? To provide for himself some riches for later. And what the lesson for us is this: that as a faithful steward, as a faithful manager of what God has trusted to us, he's our master, he's entrusted to us resources, he wants us to honestly, not dishonest, honestly and shrewdly provide true riches for our eternity. So it matters how we use our resources, how we use not just our money, but many things, everything God has given us, to invest it in such a way that it goes into eternity, doesn't just end up dying here. And Jesus is telling us that there is a way. There is a way. There's not many ways, but there is a way that you can take it with you. Now, don't try to stuff it in your coffin, okay? It doesn't fit, and it's going to rot in the dirt. But there is a way. And the way is by wisely investing the resources that God has entrusted for you to manage. Remember, you're the manager. We're the manager of CCC. We're the manager of the building. We're the manager of the money in the bank accounts. We're the manager of our families. We're the manager, I'll talk about that later. But we're not the owners, we're the managers. Me too, okay? Right? We're the managers. And there is a way that if we manage correctly, things then will matter for all of eternity, not just die here on earth with us. So it's all over the Bible. Build up treasures in heaven, where moths do not, whatever, make them rotten. Forgot to quote the rest of that. Sherry could. Go ahead. Build up treasures in heaven where moths and
Perhaps, I don't know.
and stuff corrupts it, right? Well, you know the idea. So he shows us 4 contrasting points, and that's where I want to go back to that slide, that help us not to miss the main point, the main lesson, and the actual purpose that Jesus tells the parable in the first place. Now, we can't miss it because I've already told you, but now we'll go through systematically and look at it. So he makes contrasting point, this versus that. So I call this first point loyal versus disloyal. You could call it different things, but anyway, loyal, faithful versus not faithful. So he's saying to us, be loyal and faithful in everything, including your money, including your finances. And there's 2 principles that I want to show you, A and B, that you can see up there. So the first contrast in verse 10 is between loyal and disloyal. Jesus is saying, do not be disloyal, as the manager in the parable was, but be a loyal and faithful manager who looks after the owner's or the master's business, knowing full well that all managers one day will give an account to that master. So, I'm a manager on earth, and I always go back and say, well, let's have a look at the books. How are you doing? On earth, businesses are supposed to earn money, so we look, how are you doing? We have a way of measuring it. And the thing is that every business has a purpose, has a mission statement. We know what success is going to mean. Some of my businesses, because of my own beliefs, are not always based on making profit. I consider many things successful, okay? But nevertheless, there's an accounting at the end of the day, and you go, well, if we don't make money, we can't afford to exist. That's in the world, right? So that's sort of my criteria when I hire a manager. This is what you have to do. This is what you're going to do. So Jesus in verse 10 says this, whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. And whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. That means exactly what it says. Okay? But it means more. You'll see in a minute. It means more. It causes us to ask this question. Every day you should ask this question. At least we should ask it today, this morning. What is the master's business? If we are caretakers, if we are stewards of the master, who has put us in charge of his stuff, because he owns everything, he created it, and he's bought it with a price. Would it not be important for us to discuss and to understand what is the master's business? You go, Master, I'd love to manage your stuff, but I got to know, what are we in business for? That's the first question that we have to ask, right? We have to ask the Master, what are we in business for? As Christians, as managers, right? And the Master tells us. He's told us all over the place, winning souls. Winning souls. He says, my business is winning souls. I just told you in chapter 15, the lost coin, the lost sheep, the lost son, the elder son who wouldn't go into the party, the rejoicing in heaven when one sinner repents compared to 99 who figure they don't need repentance. He says, my business is winning souls for the kingdom. It's people being saved, coming into the kingdom. That's my business. And so where are you going to invest? Invest there. I have to do that because I'm obligated to the master. We can't go wrong when we invest in God's work because that is his business. And that's the purpose that we are managers of his business. So there's these two crucial concepts then. If you look up there it's called stewardship. And basically, stewardship is God owns it, I manage it. I mean, that's it. You can go for it. Like, this is it. God, this is yours. I'm just here to manage it. Eventually, I'm just going to leave it here, okay? But I want to do the best I can while I'm here, entrusted to it. And Jesus teaches us that God owns everything, right? And we manage it. In fact, I hope you know this. God owns you. Right? God owns you. He's bought you with a price. He bought you with his blood. So it's not just money then that I'm talking about. See, we are caretakers. We are managers of many things. We're managers of our time. And so the question for application for us is, am I using my time wisely? We're managers of our talents, our abilities. And you go, am I using my abilities wisely? Oh yeah, I work 16 hours a day building whatever, houses. But is that wise? Is that the master's business? Now, is he saying don't go to work at building houses? No, build houses. Do whatever your talents are. But how are you using that to ultimately fulfill the master's business, the master's purpose? Our relationships. Are we taking good care of our relationships? Are we in the area of relationships? What does the master say to us about relationships? Does he say, oh, well, stay bitter and become bitter? No, he says, don't be bitter, be better. Forgive. Ask for forgiveness. Go and ask if someone has something against you and forgive them. So our area of influence that God has placed us in, this is huge. All you got to do is just look, right? You just look around, look at your life, and you'll see, well, why did God put me here? And you go, wow, I have a lot of influence there. Why did God bring me there? Wow. If you're a young person and you're in school, how you interact with your friends is very important, right? You have an influence, you can influence your friends towards God's business. When you go to work, whatever it is that you're doing, that's our primary purpose. Keep that in mind, right? And then there's a whole area of huge influence. We are fathers. We are mothers. We are, sons, daughters, uncles, aunts, brothers and sisters. Wherever God has placed you, right, you have influence, huge influence. There's people that when you talk to them, they will listen to you. He's put them right there. What are you doing at that time? There's co-workers. There's friends. I repeat it again. Please, look at your life. I'm going to do that too. I look at my life and I'm thinking, am I about my Father's business all the time with all of those things? Yet money is part of it, but it's not the only part. Everything is part of it. Because then there is stuff. There's this money stuff. And it says there, whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. And so we use this verse many times, very little, very little. Not referring to the amount. That's not what it's really saying. It's not referring, when it's saying very little, it's not... Bob, can you sit down?
Can't find him in.
Sit down. He's right there, you sit down. You're in the right place.
Well, there he is.
You are in the right place.
You're right.
You are, and we're going to have lunch, but you got to listen for a while. Just not true. So, how did I get lost? Oh, right there. So the point is, in verse 10, right, it says that we can be trusted with very little, and then if you can be trusted with very little, then you can be trusted with much. Whoever is dishonest with little is dishonest with much. And so that's a good principle. I mean, that's a good way of figuring things out. But I want you to tell you that this is not really the understanding of that verse. Very little is not referring to the amount. It's referring to the importance. To the importance. And if you notice here, very little is referring to money. It's saying if you cannot be trusted with such a little thing, your money, not the amount of money, because remember, this is all relative. You could have $1 billion, or you could have $100, or you can have $10. It doesn't matter. The amount is not the point. It's the importance of it. It's referring, it says, the money is actually very little in his kingdom. It's not very important, but if you can be trusted with that, he will trust you with something much, much bigger. Well, what's bigger than money? You would say, man's souls, right? People's eternity. And how can he trust you with someone's eternity if he can't trust you with the little thing? Money, little money. Or it doesn't matter the amount, because it's just money. $1 million, like the guy the richest man in the world, his money is a little thing, because eventually it'll be gone. And he won't bring it with him. You see, that's what Jesus is saying. I want you to get that. He's telling those guys, it is important that you take care of the little thing, that you take care of your finances, your money. Because if you can be trusted with that, God is going to add something way more important, the souls of men and women. And you can be trusted with that, you see. And in our parable, this manager that Jesus was talking about was, in the story that he was trying to make a point, was squandering his master's possession. He was squandering what the master had entrusted him with. He was not acting at all in the master's best interest. He was actually acting in his own interest. And the thing is this, nobody just wakes up one morning and says, I'm really clever on how to figure out how to take care of myself. He'd been doing that all along. Now, it doesn't say that in the Bible or in the story, but we can infer that this wasn't the first time, he used bribery to gain something for himself. And so he wasn't being trusted with very little, with the money. The Lord wants us. So what is he saying? Well, you got to give all your money away. Well, he actually says that. In your heart, you got to give it. So does he mean like we have to live completely poor? Well, because then how can you be a good steward? That's not what he's saying. Accumulate wealth for the right things. Use it to win souls for the kingdom. Right? We can enjoy God's blessings. He wants us to focus, however, he wants us to focus on storing treasures in heaven, not on earth. Because those are the things that we take with us. Right? In 1 Timothy, let me quote it to you. Paul was talking to Timothy, but he says, command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. So you see, when you see money as God has provided for you to enjoy it, and what's the greatest joy in the world? To see someone come to Christ. It's worth having a party, Like we have lunch every day, every Sunday. It would be nice to have a party every Sunday because somebody came to Christ. We should use our riches for that. We should focus on it. We should focus on it. And in verse 18 it says, command them actually. Command them to do good. Saying to Timothy, to be rich in good deeds and to be generous and willing to share. In this way they will lay up treasures for themselves as a firm, I love the way he says this, as a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may not hold, so that they may not make, so listen to this. I'm going to read it again because this is really good. In this way, they will lay up treasures for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of the life that is truly life. You see, if we get this concept, we begin life. We begin to live, to truly live, to truly live. Right here and into eternity. And then the next B, I'm still at B there, but I'm going to go faster now. As a manager, I must give an account. As you being a manager and a steward of God's resources, you will give an account. And the books will be open. What have you done? That's what will happen. Of what I've done with what the Master has entrusted with me. What he's entrusted with you. I mean, that's just common sense, right? I'm not going to entrust you and tell you to go and manage my stuff and then say, just do what you want and I don't really care. What kind of master would I be?
I'd do that.
That'd be terrible, wouldn't it, Bob?
It would.
It's exactly that. So we must be faithful, honest, and stewards, and who fulfills the purpose of God. And we must understand that purpose, right? We must understand the business that God is in. In verse 9 he says this, I tell you, use worldly wealth, right, to gain friends for yourself, so that when it is gone, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings. What it's saying is that when your life is gone, when the wealth is gone, friends will be there to welcome you in the eternal dwellings. The friends don't get you into the eternal dwellings, we know that. But when you get there, wouldn't that be wonderful? Somebody will say, wow, thank you. You give to the Amazon missions, you know, and this Amazon Indian, you know, says, I would never known, but you guys, or somebody from Laos shows up there and says, you know, wow, so glad, I just, you know, I got a job in a coffee shop there with Andrew, and is it Andrew? Yeah, and his wife, and now I know the Lord, and wow, let me give you a hug. I never saw you before. I don't know, it's going to be like that, but that's going to be wonderful, right? So what he's saying is that we should use them. I'm kind of skipping through because we're running out of time. We started late. Money to make friends with people who we share the gospel and then are saved, right? That's what I just said. Buying up every opportunity. We're commanded to buy up, to make the most of every opportunity to reach those who are lost, to reach the lost ones. So we want to do that. Has to be our main focus. Painting the wall? Not our main focus. Sorry, Rani. But we need to be clean. We need to be good. But it can't be our main focus, right? When earthly riches fail, and they will, right? They will fail you. You go, oh, no, I'm in secure stocks and bonds. I've guaranteed investments. They will fail, right? Stephanie, you've seen it fail, right?
Yeah.
They will fail, right? When earthly riches fail. Because, you know, I'll tell you why. There's very few things that as a pastor I can tell you I can guarantee. You know, because God doesn't like me to say that, because he's God, right? But the one thing I can guarantee, one day you will die. One day I will die. One day will go to be with the Lord. And the riches, whether you have the little thing, whether you have $1 billion or $100, will not make any difference. You see, unless it's made a difference for eternity, for the kingdom. And I might as well say this because I'm liable to get to the end and forget. This is not about earning your salvation, right? You got your salvation. This is just about being faithful, caretaker, right? Being faithful. It's the response to being a manager. We want to be a good manager, a good steward. And you know what? If you don't die, then Jesus comes back and same thing happens. He'll set it all straight. He'll explain the parable himself. So each one of us must ask ourselves this question. That's our application, really. Am I managing the resources God has entrusted to me? You go, well, He hasn't entrusted to me, I got so little. Remember, it's not about the amount. Right? It's entrusted, whatever it is, even the little bit, in view of giving an account someday. And here's going to be the account. Have you fulfilled His purpose? Or were you just fulfilling your purpose? So that's a deep question that we need to constantly search. And then my number 2 point is just common sense. I mean, temporary versus eternal. Well, what would you rather do? Have something that you invest in and runs out, or something that lasts forever? Well, obviously lasts forever. 16:10 says, whoever can be okay, let me skip that. I already enough time. Jesus is contrasting this little thing. I've already explained it. In verse 11, he says, so if you have not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches? You see, kind of went ahead of myself. But that's the truth. What's true riches? People's souls. They last forever. They're eternal. Worldly wealth, not so much. Here today, gone tomorrow. And in verse 12 it says, if you have not been trustworthy with someone else's property, remember, you're a caretaker. This is not your stuff. This is God's stuff. This is His property. Who will give you property of your own? Who will give you souls? And you go out there and you bring someone to Christ. You say, follow me. Are you faithful? What did Jesus mean when He said, make disciples of all nations? Baptizing them and teaching them to obey. Are you faithful to that? You've heard this so many times. I just found a different rendition of it. Thomas Adams said, to part with what we cannot keep, that we may get that we cannot lose, that which we cannot lose, is a good bargain. Are you looking for a good bargain? Look for a good bargain. Because we're not going to keep our worldly riches. Please, please. I mean, God, talk to me too on this. I mean, my heart has to be changed as well on these issues. And so number 3, then we have this great choice, which is the title of, who's your master? Is it God or is it money? God versus money. And God makes it clear in verse 13. Choose your master. He says you can't have it both ways. You've got to choose today. No one can serve 2 masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and worldly stuff. I said money in my version, Bible says money, but it's actually mammon, which is referring to worldly stuff. Everything is included. Resources. So then in that verse 13, Jesus gives us this contrast. We either serve God or money, but we can't do both, and we must choose, right? So I want to just give you 2 personal tests here. Or not tests, but just 2 outcomes. And then I'm going to close. well, there's number 4, but I'll go quick. If God is your master, then you know that it's His will to use it for building up His kingdom. To use your money and your wealth and your resources, investing in people's eternity. So when you go and Jesus says, give an account, you're not going to be able to go, whoa, my bank account is big. I kept all that money and multiplied it into thousands and billions of dollars. And I have stocks and bonds, and you can't. You won't be able to use that. Because He's going to go, wow, real good, but that wasn't my purpose of why I put you in charge. It's not the master's business. Eternity is His purpose and His business. And you are His steward. You are His manager. You are His caretaker. So, you choose God. Be there, if you can see it. Actually, I didn't put it there. These are my only notes. If money is your master, then look forward to this. You have a love affair. You know those 2 little rings or hearts together on the bulletin? You got a love affair going on with somebody. If it's not God, then it's your riches. And that love affair will take you to many temporary places. It'll take you to some stuff that will just wear out. You might get a new car and it'll smell good for a couple months, and then the thrill is gone. There'll be all kinds of, the 95-inch TV, and then it's too small. You need a bigger one. Things are so addictive. And then you want to get more. And what happens, what I find, and from personal experience, we become rooted. It's like these roots grow deeper in. And it's like, I can't get away from these roots, because you're being rooted into the ground as though you belong here forever. And you don't. We don't. We're not here forever. Pull those roots out. Because the end will come. Now, you know how many funerals I've done? I mean, I'm not this seasoned pastor, but I've been a pastor for a long time. I've done a lot of funerals. I've buried a lot of people. It's always the same thing. Always the same thing. And I've watched people grow old. And I've watched young people. Same thing. So my number 4, I'm just being a little flippant there, but the point is, be smart, don't be stupid. You know what's going on. I'm just using that language on purpose. Don't be stupid. Be smart. Use today's opportunities, because today we have it, to provide for unavoidable future realities. We all will grow old. We all will get sick. Some of us sooner than others. We will all die. We will all leave all the worldly wealth behind. And the only thing that will count is what we bring with us. People, souls for the kingdom. Amen? So be a good steward. Be a good steward. Know how temporary this stuff is. Be shrewd. When He's commanding shrewd, He's saying this. Actually, I looked it up in the dictionary. Shrewd, clever, discerning, awareness, practical, hard-headed cleverness, and have good judgment. I would say have sober judgment, even, from Webster's dictionary. I'm skipping much of my sermon here. I have all kinds of other stuff I could have shared, but I'm not going to. I just want to go straight to this application because we're going to run out of time. In God's kingdom, brothers and sisters, it's never too late. You say, wow, but did I ever screw it up? I've spent all my life focusing on the wrong stuff. I don't pass the test of good stewardship in God's kingdom. You might be there. I know I thought about me. And I'll tell you, it's never too late. If you are still breathing today, it's not too late. Jesus gives us grace upon grace. We just sang that Amazing Grace song. That's what it is. But we know that the time is coming when the riches of this world will fail us. We know that. It's not too late. But we know that the end of our life is coming. And it's obvious. And for some of us it may be sooner, some of us it's later, and I don't want to depress you. But the thing is, we shouldn't be depressed. We should rejoice that God has given us even that last grace to bring us home. Should we be blessed in that way, Christ might return before we go to be with Him. And then money won't do us any good in heaven. There is no currency. There is no heaven currency. How much is $10 worth in heaven? I don't know. How much is $1 billion worth in heaven? I don't know. They don't need it. How much is gold worth in heaven? I don't know. Scrap metal. They'll build the Eiffel Tower with it. God doesn't care. But we can use our money now to store up treasures in heaven by making eternal friends. Eternal friends. First they're friends, then we share the gospel, and they become eternal friends. And you imagine the party and the joy. Brothers and sisters, that's true riches. Won't fade away, you can't lose it. It's guaranteed. It's a no-brainer, right? Let's pray. Father, we thank you so much, Lord, for illuminating this parable for us.